It's cold. All right, what's up, y'all? What's up? What's up? What's up? Yep. I'm wearing this blanket because here's the deal. I turned the air on in my house because it was starting to get like weirdly nasty, like a little weirdly sweaty. So I turned the air on, right? But then nighttime happened, and I'm guessing the temperature of night dramatically dropped. So now it's like cold, and the obvious solution is, well, turn the air off, right? I don't want to do that because I know the moment I turn the air off, it's gonna like be like the sun's gonna be in my parking lot, and it's gonna be sweltering, and I'm gonna die. So I'm just gonna keep the air on, but wear a blanket. Also, we got Ann Triton, Spark Nation. What's up? What's up? What's up? But it's time to get into it, y'all. It's time. The moment y'all been waiting for. Character assassination. They done shot my characters, dog. They done assassinated them. Oh, what they do to you? But what did they do to my boy? Oh, God. Oh, my God. It's Kuro. What's up, Kuro? Hello. So, what exactly am I talking about with character assassination? What is character assassination? Well, let's go into the definition of it first. That's how we do things at the round table. You already know what it is. Character assassination is when the character that is well-renowned or loved in an anime, or hell, not even well-renowned or loved, just known in an anime or any form of fiction, for some reason in the middle of said fiction or towards the end of said fiction, does dramatically different things for the sake of either A, the writers forgetting how they originally were, or B, the character has progressed in the context of the story, but from an outside fan's perspective or even narratively has shown to regress due to that progression. Now, if you all see, there's like 2 Dragon Ball picture examples I put on here, but in Dragon Ball, this is a little more common than any of the other animes that I put on here. That's why I had a weirdly hard time finding some major examples of character assassination, but they are present. And I use Dragon Ball as an example for 2 big reasons, but I can name some lesser reasons in order for you all to like kind of understand where I'm coming from. When a character is known for something, or a character has a solidified place, and then suddenly as the series continues, usually with an elongated series, the character's relevance starts to like decrease, or the character's treatment starts to get like strangely dismissed as if they weren't a very pivotal character at the beginning. A lot of examples for this in Dragon Ball would literally be the characters that were in the original Dragon Ball. You got Yamcha, you got Tien, you got Oolong, you got Puar, you got the turtle himself. Like a lot of these characters that were very prominent at the beginning of the series, that made a very staple role for themselves at the beginning, unfortunately got character assassinated because they were pushed as fodder, or they were literally told to the audience that these characters are weak now, or they're just flat out used as like throwaway characters in order to make things worse. Now, even characters that aren't like this, even characters that are useful for the current plot of the story, can be character assassinated. I didn't put Goku in this, but he's an example of a character that got treated this way. Vegeta definitely got treated this way. Gohan gets treated like this pretty much every other arc, because they love running that joke into the ground for some reason. The pictures that I put on screen here, going outside of the realm of Dragon Ball, Ash Ketchum is a large example of a character that got character assassinated. Usopp from One Piece, specifically comparing his pre-time skip to his post-time skip. Rock Lee from Naruto is a character that got a really bad deal when it comes to everything. Neji from Naruto literally got killed. That's about as character assassination as you can get. Sometimes a character is assassinated for the sake of a plot continuing. Like Yamcha got character assassinated not once, but twice. Once because of his relevancy as a useful character, as a fighter, a martial artist, and the second time because he ended up basically being a character that had to be dumped by Bulma for the sake of Bulma getting with Vegeta. And the only reason that's the case is because they needed to make Trunks. Only for us to find out years later, Trunks technically wasn't even supposed to be made. Like, Bulma and Vegeta getting together to make Trunks is more or less a fluke that happened in Dragon Ball that just sort of took place. But Toriyama writes this on the fly, so he sort of just rolled with it and said, yeah, character that can turn Super Saiyan and time travel? Check, check. Okay, Bulma uses machines to time travel. Bulma is associated with machines. Vegeta's associated with Super Saiyan. Sure, whatever, we'll make those two go together. But we need Bulma to get out of that relationship with that one guy first. And thus, character assassination was made for Yamcha. Yamcha's a cheater, which, weirdly enough, in Dragon Ball Kakarot, that video game that I really don't care for, Toriyama does at least put in some effort and put notes in that game where we see a cutscene of Yamcha telling Goku that he didn't cheat. He helped a girl who got robbed, and Bulma jumped to conclusions. Which, honestly, yeah, that's Monday night quarterbacking after the fact, but we can definitely see that that move was made specifically at that point in time in order to make one action happen right after the other. The character assassination already took place, and damage control had to be put in afterwards in order to justify the actions. But we still can't be denied his character got assassinated. Other examples of a character being assassinated are pretty much what you guys are stating here with Dragon Ball, is because writing staff tries to exaggerate Toriyama's sense of comedy to a tonal shift akin with the internet memes. Alon and Journey's getting wharfed. Yep. Cassidy and Butch should have been Kaiba. Yeah, I can see that one. And I can definitely talk about Seto Kaiba's. Where is in Dark Side of Dimensions, for example. Kaiba's always been a character that takes honor and pride over everything else. And in Dark Side of Dimensions, he weirdly regresses. What I mean by this is, Kaiba's always been a character. Oh, unless you meant Kiba from Naruto. Kaiba's always been a character that can, even though it's not Kaiba, Kiba should have died instead of Neji. What was Kiba even doing? Good point. That's because, unfortunately, Masashi Kishimoto doesn't know how to use his characters. But we can still use a Seto Kaiba example, though. Kaiba's always been a character that's shown great pride. And one of the biggest things for him to admit towards the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, look, the Pharaoh was the one that I had a rivalry with. But since he's gone, you're pretty much the king of games. And I gotta accept that, and honestly, I don't have a big rivalry against you, so that's fine. I'm gonna continue building Kaiba Land and just being the best at that. It was a big, like, pill for Kaiba to swallow, but he swallowed it and moved on. It was very graceful to see him humble himself at the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, Dark Side of Dimensions, while it helped Yugi's character progress and develop, it hurt Kaiba's character, because Kaiba went back to this whole, I need to bring the Pharaoh back nonsense, only for Yugi to basically tell him, he's gone, bro. He's not coming back. So what does he do? Rather than just accept that and continue, he builds a freaking time machine and winds up going back in time to duel at him. It's so stupid. It's horrifically stupid. I hate it. I don't like it. Sometimes I like to pretend that part didn't exist. Anyway, for Kiba, unfortunately, with Masashi Kishimoto, I chose Rock Lee specifically because Rock Lee more or less represents what Naruto really is supposed to be about. Even if you're not born gifted and talented, a nobody can become somebody if he's like, and rise above it all. Rock Lee, unfortunately, feels like he's more prevalent to what that means than anybody else in the show, Naruto included. Naruto was born under the 4th Hokage, one of the strongest ninjas in the world, along with the Uzumaki clan sealing ninja who had the ability to seal up the nine-tailed fox. And after born under all these crazy conditions, not only had a demon inside of him, but also is the descendant of a god ninja that existed a long, long time ago. So he's the epitome of talent in and of itself, being born into the world. He just got a very awkward birth, that's all. But Naruto kind of defeats the whole premise of what it means to be a nobody turned into somebody special. But Rock Lee is the perfect definition of it. Rock Lee, weirdly, is ahead of his time. Rock Lee wasn't able to use ninjutsu or genjutsu, which ironically enough is the formula a lot of future animes are gonna follow. My Hero Academia kind of cheats themselves out of this, but they start up with it. A person with no quirks surrounded by everybody that has quirks being a superhero. Or Black Clover, a person who can't use magic surrounded by everybody who can use magic, trying to be the greatest, the Wizard King, right? This whole, like, the character that has the least amount of things becoming the greatest of that thing trope. And Rock Lee is basically the one that walked so that those characters can run. And thankfully, those characters wind up shining. But what does Rock Lee get? Rock Lee, in part 1, starts off really strong with a really good premise and even excels past everybody's expectations, only for his arm and leg to basically get shot. And then he has to recover. And then when he finally does recover, he's like a quarter of what he used to be and doesn't get anywhere relevant outside of it. He never winds up using like the 5th, 6th, or 7th, or even 8th gates in order to fight off against like very strong ninjas that Naruto, Sasuke, and the others could beat. He never gets the chance to really show off his taijutsu in any way that he hasn't shown it off before. He never gets the chance to like excel or exceed at anything that characters haven't done before. He never gets the chance to really save anybody or do anything relevant in the war that anybody else isn't already doing. He's mostly just doing generic fighting, and Masashi Kishimoto will sometimes remember he exists and put him in filler sometimes so that he can fight off one-off ninjas that don't really matter. But Rock Lee as a whole is just a guy, unfortunately. He starts off as a guy with no talent and ends off as just a guy. It's implied that he's with Tintin in order to make his son metal, but we don't know that, so it's up in the air. He's like he's generically like just there. Boruto doesn't do him any favors. He doesn't wind up teaching Boruto like advanced taijutsu or any of the other kids. Like he doesn't end up teaching Metal anything crazy. He's mostly just there at that point. He gets a spinoff, but that's a spinoff. I'm talking about the main series. Unironically, Rock Lee having a spinoff series is actually very fitting. I'll rewatch that over and over the Shinobi War any day. And it's like, but overall, you have to admit his character got assassinated. They had to do it. Because if Rock Lee had gotten any better, he would have superseded Naruto. Yeah, Sun and Moon did that with Fabo. And it's like, they had to do that though. Because if Rock Lee got any more famous, he would have been more preferred than Naruto was. If you were to make a spin-off series at all and have it excel and not be a short version of it, it would definitely be Rock Lee rising through the ranks. But they don't want to do that. One of the reasons I put Pokemon in here is because Ash Ketchum, thankfully this character no longer is in the series anymore, but Ash Ketchum is a character that has existed for he's existed for more than 25 years in the series. We've watched Ash grow up all this time and go through all these things. So when we see his character, it's very clear that it's going to be assassinated at one point just because of how long Pokemon's been going. Pokemon is one of those series that literally lasted more than 1,000 episodes. So there was definitely going to be some assassination of his character just due to the longevity of it all. It's hard to make an 1,000-year series or a 1,000-episode series be consistent with its main source material. And characters are definitely going to go through character development. Now, whether you view his character change as character growth, development, or assassination is completely up to the fan itself, up to the consumer. But you can definitely tell that when you watch some things, they're very inconsistent with what's happening when you know the character from the start. Ash from the beginning makes mistakes, but those are mistakes that are common because it's his first time. But when you start seeing Sun and Moon Ash start making OG Ash mistakes, or even worse than OG Ash mistakes, you really start to question what the hell is going on in this series. When you start to see Journey's Ash make Sun and Moon mistakes, or even Best Wishes mistakes, or even if you see Best Wishes Ash make OG mistakes, then you really start to wonder what exactly is going on. And this is what happens when you revolve a bunch of different writers around every time. You're obviously, it's the equivalent of playing telephone, but with an entire franchise that has an already established character. When you play telephone, you whisper in somebody's ear what the last person said to you. But if the message got construed or miscommunicated in some type of way, then the last person who tells the message is going to tell almost a completely different message than what the original messenger said. And that's the same thing that happens here. Revolving around a bunch of different characters, revolving around a bunch of different people, interactions, and basis of it all, you end up seeing what happens when a character in fiction ends up getting written over and over and over and over and over again. Sometimes this can be used to an almost cynical example, like Family Guy with Brian. Yes, I know this isn't really an anime character, it's an animated character, but I can give a brief summary of it. Brian from Family Guy is one of the characters that, like most of the cast, got changed dramatically over the course of multiple seasons because Family Guy is a series that's ran for a very long time. And unlike The Simpsons that has a formula that realistically can be used over and over and never dies, Family Guy has a formula that could do that, until Family Guy realized that it was getting more popular and needed to keep up with the modern media. So Brian becomes this character that originally was Peter's words of wisdom best pal, who is an alcoholic for cheeky, gags. And then he unfortunately devolved into a character that was more or less kind of cynical, to the point where everybody in the universe openly makes fun of him or talks down on him, or even to a point where it feels like Seth himself has made the character bad so that he can almost attack it. He literally even tried to kill this character at some point, but due to popular fan demand, he came back. But what happened when he came back? He gets berated multiple times by Stewie. He rarely gets to hang out with Peter anymore, and the rest of the, I call them the Clam Gang, because they go to the Drunken Clam. He never gets the chance to really say anything prominent in the family to get them back on, track. He never gets to, really, be there for the family anymore. He almost feels like a separate entity from the family that they can poke fun of if they're not poking fun of Meg. And while poking fun of Meg was fun as a let's give the teenage girl a hard time deal because she sounds bratty anyway, this was in an almost cynical example where the characters basically tear Brian down from the inside out and make him sound like an existential failure, almost forgetting the fact that the whole reason that Family Guy accepted him and Peter accepted him was because he picked him up from the pound. He was a foster animal at this point. But the reason that they did that type of assassination, and it can be revealed later that Seth himself kind of had something against Brian because Brian was too much like Seth is himself. Seth is atheist, so he makes Brian atheist, regardless of the fact that Brian has seen God multiple times in the series. How does this relate back to the anime example, though? Characters here can be changed for different writer reasons, but can also be changed because the writer themselves has changed how they've written the character, or they forget details about the character. Toriyama, may he rest in peace, is a writer that has constantly stated that he is forgetting details about his own series. Dragon Ball isn't a series that was going consistently, by the way. Dragon Ball is a series that's taken breaks. After Dragon Ball Z, we hopped straight into GT, but Toriyama wasn't involved in GT. Not really. He made a little bit of concept art, yes, but Toriyama wasn't openly involved in GT. He mostly just gave the thumbs up for it. Toriyama didn't make any of the movies either, except for later in Battle of Gods. And in Battle of Gods, you can clearly see he forgot a couple of things. Forgetting that Super Saiyan 2 even existed. Forgetting, like, several other characters and what they could do. Forgetting that Piccolo can stretch or turn big. Various things like this that the audience obviously knows, and the audience themselves have outlived the writer themselves, not just physically, but in a mental state. While Toriyama obviously liked making Dragon Ball, there was a certain point where he even stated that he was fatigued of making Dragon Ball. If we look into recent notes and interviews, we see that after the Cell Saga, he states he's literally fatigued of Dragon Ball, which is why the Majin Buu arc was a way for him to, like, sort of find a healthy middle ground. He enjoyed making Majin Buu because Majin Buu was a round, chubby comedic character they can play his comedy off of. That's why the Majin Buu arc is about a lot more humorous than serious, like the Frieza and Cell sagas were, or even the Saiyan saga. It was a way for him to lighten up a little bit, and you put a little bit more of his Toriyama fun into it, rather than making it a super serious arc. And I can't knock him for that, and that definitely does help change my view of the Majin Buu arc a little bit more. I personally still prefer the last 2 arcs that came before it, or even the 3 arcs if we count the Saiyan saga. But I understand at least why the Majin Buu arc was personally a favorite for him based on the concept of Dragon Ball Z. After Dragon Ball Z, however, we see that as the series continues, Toriyama only starts going into work again when he makes Battle of Gods, and then we move on to Dragon Ball Super, and then that got split from both anime and manga, which split into 2 different continuities as to what happened. So now we have this situation where Toriyama has to write these characters over again, but make sure they're still in line with what he wrote for them well over 10, 15 years ago. Is it going to be consistent? No. It would be like me writing an essay that has about 5 paragraphs, and I was supposed to write a 10-paragraph essay, and I wrote the first 5, and then left for about 7 years, came back, and wrote the final 5. My entire worldview has changed. My views on life have changed. Events have changed. Things have changed. My style of speaking with other people have changed. My intellect has changed. A lot of things have changed. And for someone that was the age Toriyama was, it's very clear things start to slip. Toriyama likes Dragon Ball. I would imagine he liked all his series. That's why he made them. But I don't think Toriyama was as passionate about his stuff as the fans were. And that's not to say that's not a level of passion. To create something is always going to be a large amount of passion. But when the fans themselves are more passionate than the author is, you're going to run into some problems. Because now the fans' expectations are like super solid, while the artist/author's expectations aren't even going to be that serious. That's why at the end of Daima, people are scratching their heads trying to figure out where Daima fits into the timeline, when in reality, I think Toriyama was just trying to end a series. He wasn't really thinking about that. But what does that have to do with character assassination? Going back to character assassination, it means that characters are going to start making differences, mostly just due to the fact that, due to absence, coming back into a project, you're taking your notes, and sadly, you're not intensely watching the series like a fan is. You're looking over what you wrote down last and then just sort of vaguely making it off of that. Toriyama didn't exactly have Dragon Ball Z just on the ready when he started making Dragon Ball Super and then later Dragon Ball Daima. He more or less probably just made Dragon Ball Super as a way to like keep things going and keep the audience busy and enjoy that so that it can like push forward. But it was very clear problems started to arise in terms of how he approached this. Goku definitely seems a lot more dumb and childish, whereas Goku used to be an oblivious character that would learn as he goes about life, but have a joyful charm about him that everybody could like cope with and like be around what later became an oblivious, joyous character that can be serious when angered has now unfortunately devolved into a character that is based off of the most simplistic tropes and stereotypes. Goku doesn't care about anything except fighting. Well, in Dragon Ball Super, he feels that way because that's how, unfortunately, everybody said he was. And then the original person who made Goku is only going off of things people may or may not have said over the years. Goku's a terrible father. Oh, that trope comes from the few times that Goku wasn't able to be on the battlefield or be around Gohan during his, like, peaceful days of growing up. You can definitely see how that stereotype could arise. But Goku's always been I wouldn't even necessarily say a good father, but he's been a father who more or less knows that he cares about his son. But unfortunately, what do you do when Dragon Ball Z was well over 30 years ago? So now you're only basing this off of he say, she say, and then add 10 to 12 years of time on top of that. Well, then you wind up with a character that more or less doesn't care about much of anything. You come up with a caricature instead of a character. Goku's become a shell of his former self. He's got all the bullet points necessary to make him Goku, but he's not really Goku. There's no depth to him. There's no moments where Piccolo tells Goku that he's gone too far, like in the Cell Saga, and Goku starts to really, like, stun his face and reflect on his actions. There's no moment where Piccolo and Tien are dying due to Semi-Perfect Cell being on the island, but Goku knows he's not strong enough to fight Semi-Perfect Cell, so he's, like, angry with himself and, like, knowing that if he goes out there, he could die, which would ruin the overall plan to beat Cell. So he's struggling with it mentally. Or he has to stop his son because he doesn't want his son to die, so he has to take drastic actions. There's no moments of Goku having inner thought about what's going on in a situation, or telling Raditz off about stealing his son and not caring about any of what the Saiyans are about and only wanting his son back. There's no Goku that wants to avenge the death of, like, all the Namekians and Saiyans that Frieza killed, despite not really knowing who Namekians or Saiyans are, but knowing that Frieza is a dick. There's no Goku that feels bad that Vegeta basically corrupted himself for a chance to fight him. So some of the weight of all those people that died at the tournament are on Goku's shoulders as well. Goku's actions are something that he doesn't really have to think about anymore because Dragon Ball Super doesn't really make him think about them anymore. It's to a point where he puts millions of lives at danger, and unlike in the Cell Saga when Goku made Cell stronger for the sake of a good fight, Goku does repay all of that and eventually pays that price by sacrificing himself when Cell's about to blow up, versus Dragon Ball Super when he puts everybody's life in danger in order to start a tournament so he can punch a few people. There's no sacrifices that Goku makes. There's nothing that Goku really does in order to reflect back on that. He doesn't really learn a lesson. He doesn't really look into himself. He doesn't really reflect any of that. He doesn't really learn from any of that. The same Goku that started off in Dragon Ball that was a kid that saw Krillin end up dying and then he rushed in order to fight Tambourine, only to end up getting beaten because he basically fought with emotion instead of logic. And then we fast forward to Dragon Ball Z, where Gohan's in pretty much the same situation, where Piccolo's getting killed, and rather than rush out like he would, and rather than Goku rushing out like he would have back in the day, he's using a more calm thought and mindset, but still holding in all that anger. We don't get that layer of depth to Goku anymore. We don't get that understanding that Goku is a character that has to grow with the situation, but is willing to think about multiple layer things. The boy that used to be an animalistic child that only knew about hunting and eating and fighting has grown into a father, and even later on into a grandfather, but has grown into a father that is willing to let another generation take on the torch in order to defend the planet. Whereas Goku's not exactly a hero, his actions have done hero-like things. But unfortunately, Dragon Ball Super replaces all that by him being pretty much a non-character. So, unfortunately, it's right. Goku isn't a hero. But he's also not an idiot either. And he's also not an enabler. But unfortunately, Super made him that. And all the movies made him that too later on after that. Same thing happens with Vegeta. While Vegeta was a character that went through a lot of changes because people really love Vegeta's character development, air quotes. Vegeta's character development mostly started off as somebody who was entitled and later on becoming humbleized every time the series happened. He got humbled by Frieza. He got humbled by Android 18. He got humbled by Cell. All these characters wound up better than him, and on top of all of those was Goku. Somebody that realistically would be a peasant to him in any other situation has now become a threat to his pride. And I know people are going to keep going saying, Vegeta and Goku, all the times they fought, Goku never blah, 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 blah. That wasn't the point. Goku was able to make accomplishments, things that made Vegeta look like a fool in comparison. It doesn't matter how many times Goku and Vegeta fought. It matters that Goku was able to topple things that Vegeta struggled on. Goku was able to beat Frieza. Goku's son's able to beat Cell. Things that Vegeta thought he could do because he was entitled have always been toppled by something. Goku's able to turn Super Saiyan 2 and then later 3 in the Majin Buu arc while Vegeta's still stuck. Like, when Vegeta finally does go evil for all of a few episodes to get back at Goku, he realizes that his actions are wrong and he needs to repent for them, so he's willing to fight alone. He sacrifices himself, but it doesn't accomplish anything. Even his attempt in order to humble himself ends in failure. What happens to his character after that is basically amazing because Vegeta finally puts all the chips down and says that Goku is better than him. It's a hard pill for Vegeta to swallow, but after going through everything he went through in the Majin Buu arc, he finally is able to admit it. And that's a great end to Vegeta's character. Even the bittersweet ending that the Cell Saga had where Vegeta states he'll never fight again is one that more or less is an eye-opener. Because Vegeta, all we know of him was that he was a fighter. He was a fighter when he was introduced. He was a fighter during most of the series. It's hard to even imagine what a non-fighting Vegeta would even look like. But that's that level of wonder that Dragon Ball had to it. Because now what you can do is take a character that essentially has taken a stance to not fight anymore. And Dragon Ball was supposed to end anyway. So it's one of those like up in the air things that makes you think. But Dragon Ball doesn't want to give us the luxury of thinking, so Vegeta gets back into the helm of fighting and becomes a good guy at the end of the Majin Buu arc, completely and totally because he's humbleized himself. You know, until Dragon Ball Super comes around and basically Vegeta regresses and says that he will catch up to Kakarot again. So unfortunately, we go back to square one. And now in Dragon Ball Super, not only is he doing that, he's committing party tricks, bowing down to Bulma, basically being Whis' bitch and Beerus' bitch, and doing everything he can in order to like get that tiny glimpse of chance to catch up to Goku. But instead of being the Vegeta that at least had some level of pride to him, he's become the Vegeta that will be used for comedic purposes because Dragon Ball doesn't want to use any of its comedic relief characters anymore because they aren't able to turn their hair yellow or some shit, I guess. So now you get this Vegeta that unfortunately has become a house husband that plays around. And that's not to say Vegeta can't be humorous or say that Vegeta can't be a good guy. Nobody's asking him to go all Frieza Saga evil on us again and start cracking old people's heads. Nobody's asking him to blow people up to smithereens like he did in the Majin Buu arc. Nobody's asking him to even be a dick like he was in the Cell Saga. What we are asking Vegeta though is to have some level of like shame to him. Some level of pride to him that makes him still be Vegeta while not being a complete clown, completely out of his element and being a humorous character. Always revert back to this example with Vegeta being a comedic character, and it's weirdly enough in the Majin Buu arc, and oddly enough, doubled but still well done in Dragon Ball GT. There's a scene where everybody has to like punch a punch machine, right? And Krillin tells everybody to chill out on the punch machine because if they go too hard, then people will start getting suspicious of their powers and it'll just cause too much like attention. And this new modern Dragon Ball world where the audience just doesn't believe in the idea of people doing outstanding things anymore, and the world tournament has more or less become a wrestling ring instead of what it used to be. All the characters still go along with it because whatever, and they all tap the machine in order to get like numbers that are more on the level of everybody else. Comically, the joke works with them still having the highest numbers in the entire Punch Machine roster. But Vegeta completely goes the Vegeta route and punches the machine as hard as he can so that the machine completely obliterates itself. And because of that, I don't know why Zachary's telling me the obvious, by the way. Because of that, it's funny. Vegeta still has a straight face when he does it all. He's still Vegeta. This is very much a Vegeta action, but it gets a comedic result. Or even when they end up leaving after eating all the food to head to the preliminary rounds of the World Martial Arts Tournament, Goku states to everybody, if I have to fight any of you guys, please don't punch me in the gut. I've ate so much food. And Vegeta goes, well, the first thing I'm going to do when I fight you in the first round is punch you in the gut. It's a very Vegeta line. It's something Vegeta would say. And it's still funny. Vegeta's not Vegeta's not crying or bowing his head or looking comically at Goku's gut to see if it's stronger than him or some shit. He's not doing some dumbass little bingo dance on his way to fight Goku. He's not eye-popping, or he's not bartering with Bulma to win the fight so that Bulma can offer panty time to him or some shit. No, Dragon Ball Daima. And it works. Vegeta's still funny, and it still works. Even a joke that remotely comes close to it in Dragon Ball GT. It's a comic joke with Vegeta where Vegeta starts to grow facial hair. He starts to get a beard and stuff, or a mustache. He starts to get a mustache. And when Vegeta has his mustache, his daughter Bra, or Bulla, if you're from America. She's not a bull. Anyway, Bra tells Vegeta that his mustache makes him look like a geek. Now, Dragon Ball Super Vegeta would have had all these little comical faces and start crying and like put his head down, and you'd see like these wacky little cartoony animations around him or some shit. I don't know. It's fucking Dragon Ball Super. But Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball GT, I'm sorry. Dragon Ball GT takes the different approach. Vegeta decides to shave the mustache. So he's still going along with what his daughter says. He takes it with some stride. But the moment he ends up shaving his mustache, he doesn't like cheese and comically walk around with a chibi face or some shit, showing off to Bulma and Chi-Chi. No, he comes to Bulma, Chi-Chi, and the others and says, hey, guy, and even Goten, and goes, notice anything different? And he like grins and looks up, and he's taking a lot of pride in it. Nobody seems to notice, which is the joke. And then he finally snaps and is like, I shaved my mustache. When Bulma and Chi-Chi berate him for this, he still has his classic Vegeta anger with a little bit of blush. He's not doing anything comedic. He's not crying. He's not begging Bulma to please notice me, Bulma-chan, so that we can have soapy bath time or some shit. Fucking Dragon Ball time, I swear to God. He just takes it all, walks away, then gets real angry at Bulma and Chi-Chi with this classic Vegeta glare. It's funny. It works. It's in Vegeta. He doesn't blow them up or anything like old Dragon Ball Z Vegeta would do. But he also doesn't act comedic about it like current Dragon Ball would have him do it. It's very in Vegeta to be this way. Later on in the saga, he actually drives Bra home from the mall because Bra's shopping, because women be shopping. And he ends up running into the Tuffles, who are controlling Goten and Gohan by this point. And he has Bra like in his arms. And rather than like place Bra in the ship like a normal person would do, he throws Bra in the ship. It's a very Vegeta joke. Vegeta's a dick, even to his own daughter. But it's still funny. And he does it because he wants Bra to be protected from the fight. So he needs to get her out of the way of the fight. So Vegeta's still doing a good action, but he's doing it in a very Vegeta way. And that's what makes it work. So the reason this goes back to character assassination is because Dragon Ball Daima, and before that was Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super took a very weird stance on Vegeta and decided to make him cartoony rather than Vegeta. And that's unfortunately because they don't really have much to do with Vegeta anymore. They got no choice but to make Vegeta this because obviously Vegeta can't pass Goku up. That'd be stupid. And he obviously can't not be in fights anymore. Continuing Dragon Ball without having the second most popular character in the show is very not money making of Dragon Ball. Vegeta has become a product of investment for Dragon Ball rather than a character himself. Vegeta is a marketing character now. He is no longer the character that people saw grow because there's no more growing left to do. And that's pretty much the reason overall why most characters go through Assassination. It's why Ash Ketchum went through Assassination, and finally the show took the big step to just let him go in favor of Liko. It's why in Detective Conan / Case Closed, they can only keep Jimmy Kudo going for so long, and they basically have to make Conan Edogawa, but they have to switch back and forth in order for these to make some relative sense, because they know full well they couldn't keep one character going for well over 30 to 40 years. It's the reason why each of the characters in One Piece have gone through some weird level of change post-time skip, because Oda has been doing One Piece for so long that he's had the characters stick with their tropes rather than having the characters be tangible. It's one of the reasons why Usopp was a character that was growing into someone who could utilize tools, whereas nowadays Usopp mostly just pees his pants and gets hurt by the slightest thing and can't really continue a fight anymore. The characters have no longer become characters. They become weird, plasticky versions of what their characters need to be in order to sell toys and market. But let's read the comments for a second. Why are you bringing up future times? It's not connected to the original. Wait, what? Oh, Kuro said something. I hope you're being ironic here because the self-fabricated problem that Goku provoked. Oh, we got to go up a little bit probably. Best Wishes had a good chance of making Ash lose without him dumbing him down. Just let the fights be more intricate with triple format and held items, since Ash would need to have accustomed to the new battle style of the region. Also, don't hesitate, he's 10. He says he's 15. Or Toriyama did all that design for GT and other than Super Saiyan 4. Toriyama actually did a sketch of Super Saiyan 4 if I'm not mistaken. It's clear that Sun and Moon and Journey's champions wins for Ash were damage control for his XY loss. He could have still got the Alola to help create the league. There's a creative way to continue him, but the staff only knows how to write him if it makes him more strong, not interesting. Did Toriyama write Battle of Gods as a response to the Evolution live action? Because if so, that 2009 movie just was more bad than good. It did more bad than good. I've imagined because Super was created due to that. Where are you getting your information? Toriyama did not write Dragon Ball Super. I didn't say he didn't write Dragon Ball Super. I said he did. He put it outline. He gave it to animation staff and they wrote the story. I mean, he helped. His name is still on the, like, if you look on the manga, his name's still on it. It says artist Toyotaro and it says author Toriyama. And I only know this because I literally got some of my students Dragon Ball Super manga because they requested it as their book to read. So that's the only reason I know that. That's just me looking at the manga and going, that's what that says. His obliviousness was acceptable at age 12 to 15, but now he's 40 plus in Super. It's not proper behavior for a grandfather to have. Crazy how Goku was more mature during the 23rd Budokai than in the Tournament of Power. Speaking of inner thoughts, that's what I loved about Liko. Unlike Ash, she's allowed to have inner monologue. With Ash, we don't really know what he's thinking, if at all. We do know Goku gave them a fighting chance because Zeno was going to destroy the universe, right? But there was no reason to even do that. Like, that line where they say Zeno was going to destroy all those universes, that's more or less a throwaway line. That's a line that was used as damage control for Goku's actions. But we still, that's like saying, I'm going to put a gun up to everybody's face. Oh, well, somebody else was going to put a gun up to everybody's face anyway. So, if anything, all you did was give them a chance. You gave them notification that they were going to have a gun put up to their face. It doesn't matter. Goku still did the action. If you point a gun at my face with the intention to kill, that's still just as serious as if somebody else did it. Your life's still at risk. So no, that's not acceptable. I hope you're being ironic here because the self-fabricated problem that Goku provoked, case in point, tournament takes place in the age 780, the same year as the events of the future Trunks. And it's time Zeno didn't do that. Oh, that's why he said that. Dude, what the hell is on? Why you bring up a future Trunks timeline? It's not connected to the original timeline. It's not connected to the original timeline, but it's implied that everything that happens in Goku's timeline happened in Trunks' timeline first. It has to because Trunks' timeline takes place in the future. So events would still carry out. As case in point, Trunks does still fight Deborah. They state that in there. So Majin Buu stuff still happened. Trunks just stopped Buu from being resurrected. So I see where Koro's going with that. Ash is the great example of what happens when showrunners refuse to let a character progress in meaningful ways. Those Terror Leaks discussions were pretty damning. Also because Ash not being a manga character means that he wasn't managed by one author, but by several people. Just say you don't like Toriyama's humor instead of complaining. No, I like Toriyama's humor when it's done correctly. When it's done in, like, for example, I like Dragon Ball, like the original Dragon Ball when he was a kid. That's good humor. That's good humor. But I also know that Toriyama has certain characters play with certain levels of humor. Like, for example, Master Roshi is a pervert. We know that. That's his character. Toriyama's very much in his realm when he writes Master Roshi being a pervert because that's Master Roshi's whole thing. But let's say you took Master Roshi's pervertedness and put it on, I don't know, Dende. Wouldn't it be kind of weird? Because we know Dende doesn't act like that. So you can do Toriyama's humor, but certain characters carry certain things. You can't write that off as saying it's Toriyama's joke. Yeah, it's Toriyama's joke, but the joke is being used on the wrong characters. That's the problem. Never read Dr. Slump and Toriyama because you're not going to like it. Dr. Slump's fine because those characters are written in a way to where I can accept that they joke like that. Vegeta was not written in that light. It would be like if you wrote Scooby-Doo, right? And you know, they actually already did. It's called Velma. Never mind. I was going to use an example that was very intricate, but they already did it. Velma kind of did that. But in Scooby-Doo's typically, like, the character, the dog itself, isn't very brave. He's very cowardly. The only time he's brave is when you wager up a Scooby snack to him, and then he finally gets his shit in gear, right? It would be like if they somehow made an episode of Scooby-Doo where instead of him being, like, a coward, he just weirdly becomes very, like, evil and starts chopping off people's heads or not even chopping off people's heads. He starts scaring, like, little children. And then they go, well, Scooby-Doo is supposed to be like a fun little, like, mystery, horror mysteries and stuff, right? Yeah, it is a horror mystery. But Scooby's not the character that does that crap. The monsters are. They're the ones that do that crap. So yeah, I get it. I get Toriyama's humor. I'm down for Toriyama's humor when the characters that do the humor do it. And obviously I talked the longest about Vegeta because Vegeta was the inspiration to even make this roundtable discussion about character assassination. And it's been going back and forth about how Vegeta is with this. And I don't mind the joke itself. The joke is fine. It's the character that's using the joke. It's not a Vegeta joke. If you had Yamcha do this joke, that would be appropriate. Yamcha seems like the type of character that would comedically go into this because Yamcha's more human. Vegeta's never been really human, at least in this run of Dragon Ball Z. Even in the Majin Buu arc where he's supposedly a good guy now, Vegeta has developed some human characteristics, but he himself has never really been that. Like if Vegeta was as seducted about Bulma's bath time as Dragon Ball is letting us believe, then why is it during the Majin Buu saga he's never really acting like that? There's never really a time where in Majin Buu, in the Majin Buu saga, where Vegeta turns Majin, right? And he's about to like blow up the crowd, right? Where, you know, where he like aims his hand towards the audience and blasts them. Where he's about to do that and Bulma yells out, Vegeta, don't kill us. If you don't, then you'll be able to have bath time with me. And Vegeta just like stops and like Babidi tries to like grip the Majin spell on him, and he like has to like struggle through it all. And then people end up like later on Twitter making jokes that Vegeta chose to goon instead of being under control of an evil wizard. Like that doesn't exist. There's never a moment where Goku's like, Vegeta, Majin Buu has absorbed everybody we love. Put on this earring. We have to fuse with each other. And Vegeta's like, I'll never fuse with you, Kakarot. You don't have true Saiyan pride. And then from Otherworld, Bulma runs to like King Kai and grabs his shoulder. And it's like, Vegeta, listen to me. This is Bulma talking to you from King Kai's telepathic powers or whatever. Listen to me right now. If you don't fuse with Goku and kill Majin Buu, then you're not gonna be able to sniff my panties. And Vegeta goes, give me the ring, Kakarot. Right? Like that's not a thing. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because even then, Toriyama knew Vegeta wasn't that type of character. That would work with another character. That's worked with another character already. We have that joke. It's Krillin's remote joke. We have it. It already exists. Krillin has to kill Android 18. If he doesn't kill Android 18, Cell will absorb Android 18 and become perfect. The androids are also a big threat because they're going to go kill Goku. Krillin has a remote that basically can kill the androids if he's within a certain distance of them, and they'll blow up. What does he do? Well, he remembers the time Android 18 kissed him, drops the remote. Boom! Same joke, same thing. Critical moment, stakes are a bit higher. Same joke though. But it's a Krillin joke, so it works out. Krillin's known to be a little bit of a pervert. Krillin's known to be romantically involved with stuff. Krillin's known to flirt with women before. Krillin understood Master Roshi a lot better than Goku did when it came to that category. Because Krillin and Master Roshi have similar mindsets. Master Roshi is obviously a bit more of a pervert than Krillin is. But Krillin, upon his debut, was a sneaky little bastard that knew like what porno magazines were. And he knew like sexualized fantasies. He knew how to bargain with Master Roshi a bit better than Goku does. Because Goku just didn't understand. Which is extra funny when Goku does learn to understand these things. But that's with development and being exposed to a person for an amount of time. And even then, Goku's not really like that. He just knows what it is. Vegeta, on the other hand, was never like that. He's never been thought of like that. He's never even been on that level. Even when Bulma was younger and debatably hotter because she was younger, Vegeta never looked at Bulma and was like, oh my god, I gotta stop everything I'm doing in order to get in those. Like, Vegeta, even in the manga, Trunks states that the only reason Trunks was born was because Vegeta and Bulma had a night of passion. The one-off thing to get Vegeta's, like, Saiyan's rocks off. And that was about it. At that point, Vegeta still is training to become a Super Saiyan. He's still pushing his body. Bulma literally yells at Vegeta in order to stop getting so mug-faced in front of Trunks. Trunks as a baby, not the future Trunks. And Vegeta goes, Bulma, will you forget the child for 1 minute and tell me where Dr. Dro's lab is so I can punch him in the face? But he never at any point is like, oh, I'm sorry, Bulma, I'm sorry that I got in front of you in Trunks' face like that. Please let me sleep with you some more. Like, he never acted like that. He was never like that, ever. Toriyama never wrote him like that. Never even pretended to write him like that. Never even came close. In fact, and the Cell Saga after that moment, and during the Majin Buu Saga, Vegeta never really says a word to Bulma. And yes, I checked. Go back into the Majin Buu Saga and watch it. Vegeta barely says anything to her. They barely exchange sentences. They're like together and all of like 3 scenes. The first scene is them flying. No, the first scene is them in the gym, in like the gym area where Vegeta's training, where Bulma makes his suit for him, right? In the lab. and Gohan tells Bulma all his troubles in high school. The second time Vegeta and Bulma are in the same area is like during their way to fly to the tournament. Like Bulma's flying the ship. No, yeah, Yamcha's flying the ship, I think. Yamcha or Bulma, one of the two. They're flying the ship over to the tournament location, and Bulma tells everybody like, yo, don't go Super Saiyan, y'all. Or Gohan says, don't go Super Saiyan, y'all. And Vegeta and Bulma just happen to be in the same scene. That's it. That's it. That's literally it. And then the third time they're together, Vegeta literally almost blows Bulma's face off. Like, he's like inches away from blowing Bulma's face off. He arrives at the tournament and literally aims at the wall, threatening to blast Bulma's face off. He doesn't know Bulma's there. He's just blasting indiscriminately like an idiot. And then the final time is when Bulma, like, hugs him when they're at the lookout after Kid Buu's killed. That's it. That's all your Vegeta and Bulma scenes right there. All your all your Bull-Gita scenes in the Majin Buu saga right there. And that's him as a good guy, by the way. That's the reformed Vegeta, the 7 years past peaceful Vegeta. That's it. All Vegeta scenes you got with Bulma. Those are it. That's it. Yeah, we got nothing else. Show leaves us with nothing. A lot of scenes that have Vegeta and Bulma in it come from Dragon Ball Super, more specifically. And I don't even count those as Vegeta and Bulma scenes. I count those as Bulma and then the remade Vegeta based on what the fans have created. Because when Vegeta and Bulma were together, and this is sadly Toriyama's weakest area, rest in peace, by the way. Toriyama's weakest area is writing relationships for characters. If he has characters be with somebody, he will not like go through the time period of them being together. He gets them together, and then time passes and they have a child and their family's just pre-made already. We don't know the details, the ins and outs. Even when Goku married Chi-Chi, he sort of just flew away with Chi-Chi, and that's pretty much the end. We don't get any details of Goku and Chi-Chi's relationship after the fact. Dragon Ball Z's filler more or less kind of gives us a little bit. Like, for example, there's a mini arc with Goku and Chi-Chi in it where they work together to get the Bancho fan. And that helps us see Goku and Chi-Chi as a more suitable relationship. It helps fill in a little bit of a gap as to who they are as a couple. And then later in Dragon Ball Z, we get some flashback episodes around the time that Gohan is growing up, where we see Gohan being a baby. We see how they all are together as a family. We see how they live. And thankfully, this fills in some gaps, but it doesn't do a super job. And then the movies can help fill in some like imaginary gaps we have. So we got plenty of Goku and Chi-Chi moments at least to like hold our own. But Vegeta and Bulma, for the longest time until Dragon Ball Super even happened, we mostly just went off of what the fans believe they would be like as a couple. What they imagine they would look like as a couple. Because Toriyama didn't really do a good job making them a couple. And again, rest in peace for that. And no one's pressuring him to make a romance anime or manga. That's not his obligation. He's making a fighting gag manga that became more fighting and less gag as time passed. And then later became gag again. But Toriyama did do a lot of art of Goku and Chi-Chi in his drawings. Yeah. So at least we got bits and pieces of what they look like as a relationship. But little next to nothing we know of Vegeta and Bulma as a relationship at all up until Dragon Ball Super decided to make it. But at that point, Dragon Ball Super was making a Vegeta and Bulma based off of what the fans believe Vegeta and Bulma would look like. And it's very obvious when you see work that's written in response to fans versus work that's written in response to the author themselves. Earlier, somebody even stated it. Ash winning all his stuff after X and Y was a knee-jerk emotional reaction to him losing against Alon, rather than a story that teaches you that winning isn't everything, and no matter how hard you try, you can still lose, but you need to pick up yourself and learn the reason you love something is because you're having fun with it rather than the pressure of losing. And making yourself be disappointed in yourself because you're so worried about what everybody else thinks, XY Ash, and then growing from that. You instead win battles very cheaply because the author doesn't want to get feedback from the fans about how much they wanted the character to win. I will say Videl and Gohan have the best relationship on screen. We see how they start to fall in love with each other. And that's because they have the glory of being teenagers. But going back into character assassination, it's sad to see it, especially when you've already seen what a well-written Vegeta can be after Buu Saga, and that's GT. GT Vegeta still acts like Vegeta, still does Vegeta things, but still has a layer of like humbleness and comedy about him that really makes him stand out as a character and allows you to accept what he is. Vegeta wants to save the Earth in Dragon Ball GT against Omega Shenron, but he's frustrated because he knows he can't do it on the same level Goku can do it. But that's still very in character for Vegeta to feel. He has a pride about it. He knows that Goku's better than him, but he's willing to still be frustrated about little things about it. He's the one that makes the suggestion to do the fusion with Goku when they both turn Super Saiyan 4, whereas the Vegeta back then would argue with Goku about it, but he's still acting like Vegeta. He's not bowing down and begging he's not bowing down and begging Goku to do the fusion with him. He's not has some giant sweat bead on his head and blushing to fuse with Goku or some shit. Dragon Ball Super. He literally makes the suggestion, and then the show just moves on with it. Not everything has to be a joke. It's actually funnier when Vegeta's the straight man because it works off Goku's silliness. And that's not saying but Vegeta can be devoid of humor. Like I said, there's several other times Vegeta can be used for his own jokes. And even for the case of Piccolo, characters that are serious can still carry a level of humor behind them. If anything, it can be done better than the character that's meant to be intentionally humorous because they have their own take on it. It's one of the reasons I actually like the Dragon Ball characters being in normal modern areas. Like when I watch the Dragon Ball movies, the Dragon Ball Z movies at least, and you see these characters being in areas like the mall or camping or like in public areas. Because they know they're, in an anime perspective, they're a fish out of water. Having straight characters like Vegeta and Piccolo being in a social area is funny just for the sake of it being funny. Them being there already has a level of humor behind it. Them acting in character makes it even funnier. Like when Piccolo's at the World Tournament and everybody's taking pictures of all of them, and Piccolo uses his little eye beam in order to destroy cameras that are all within that radius. It's funny. It's funny because Piccolo is being very serious about this, while jokingly, nobody else knows what or why this is happening. Why are these cameras being destroyed? How come it always happens whenever Piccolo's around us? They haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, but it's still funny. And Piccolo carries on with it. He doesn't make this comedic joke about it. He doesn't announce that he's gonna do it. He doesn't flail around saying, oh, the cameras, I've gotta do something. No, he just does it. And that's the beauty of it. Straight comedy is a very well used tactic between a lot of serious characters. Having the characters be out of their element sometimes can be funny, but it has to be used within subtleties. If it's used all the time, then it starts to wear itself out. Like, for example, there's this one small scene in Dragon Ball Z, and you got to be really, really watching it in order to pay attention to it, because it's so small that nobody will realistically notice it. It's a scene where everybody is like trying to figure out exactly how to handle the fact that Cell just announced the Cell games. So they're all waiting it out at Bulma's house in Capsule Corp, right? They're waiting it out and they're talking with each other. And what ends up happening is Bulma ends up raging out. And when she does, Chi-Chi shows up and rages out. And when she does, she flips it and like everybody gets knocked back. And all the characters fall back in a comedic way. Vegeta falls back in a comedic way along with them. But the really interesting part here is that everybody is in that joke together. So while Vegeta's doing a wacky thing, he's not really the one that's like piloting the joke. He's not the one in the front and center of it. He's just an unfortunate side piece that just happens to be swept up in the comedic explosion of the joke. So it's funny because they don't have to use Vegeta's character for this. It's just one of those weird things he happens to be a part of. And that's how you use a character well. Because it's throwing a fish out of water, but the fish can still be the fish. You're not changing the entire structure of the character just for this joke to take place. Other examples of character assassination usually can be when the character contradicts themselves. Much like in Ruby, if anybody's watched that. Yang is a very hypocritical character because she states that a lot of characters will just be cowards and run away from fights, when Yang literally does that later on in the series with no real justification for it. A lot of characters end up being the way that they're being because they follow some type of principle. And while that principle can change periodically as the show continues, there still needs to be an ounce of that character progressively changing into that, rather than a dramatic change like Ruby did from season to season. But characters going through a character assassination, again, is usually the victim of time. It's not the character's fault. Realistically, when we talk about these things, we have to remind ourselves, none of these characters are real. They're at the mercy of whatever's drawn on the paper and then dubbed out of their mouths. Like, realistically, these characters don't have any real control of what they're doing. They're all just art and scripts and words, all thrown together in order to make them move forward. And that's the beauty of art when it comes to writing. One person can have a certain personality or mindset, but if they're making multiple characters with different personalities and mindsets, it's almost like an extension of themselves being split into several different people across a whole, span of a universe that they've created. And as you make more characters, it's harder and harder to stretch that line of the different possibilities that they can or can't be. How many jokes of a character can you do before the character winds up outliving themselves in terms of being the comedic character? One of the reasons that Toriyama had such a difficult time with this was because some of the characters more or less had the same joke. You got the wise sage sensei-like character that's also very comedic. You got the character that's supposed to represent God, but the God-like character is one of the most childish characters on the entire universe. Zeno is supposed to be the god of all things, but acts like a baby. Majin Buu is supposed to be this terrifying demon, but acts like a man-child who's chubby and loves sweets. Master Roshi is supposed to be this wise turtle sage, but he's basically a pervert gooner that loves looking at women's panties. Elder Kai is supposed to be this wise Kai that unlocks full potential in your powers and knows a lot of things, but he's just like Master Roshi. King Kai is this wise person that's supposed to give you strength beyond your abilities if he teaches you his techniques, but he has this tiny little car that he drives in his tiny little planet and makes corny dad jokes all day. It's that weird level of expectation that's built up with the character, but then is revealed to be something completely different when it's revealed, which is great. But how many times can you do that trope before you know you have to throw the character away for a different character? You can, in a sense, say that a lot of characters in media, not just in Dragon Ball, but Pokemon, Naruto, and most shonen anime, wind up getting thrown out for characters that do their job better. How many straight-faced, normal characters that like fighting can you put in Bleach before you start running into 5 of the same character over and over? How many characters can you run into in Naruto that are discriminated against when they were children and treated like absolute crap, and then have a weird hatred against the world that they have to overcome by their overall talents before you just have a bunch of copies of Naruto? And no, I'm not talking about the shadow clones. How many times can Naruto look at a character that he's fighting and go, he's just like I was when I was a child? Before you start realizing, okay, I'm guessing everybody's a Naruto now. But Naruto's the main character of this Naruto, so he has to kill this Naruto or beat this Naruto so that we can move on with the Naruto that we currently have. Gaara's a Naruto. Nagato's a Naruto. Every Naruto's a Naruto. But we need Naruto to be the Naruto, so every other Naruto has to suffer for it. Gaara, while I love his character development, how he becomes someone that really is well respected upon his village and becoming a Saiyan Hokage, unfortunately, he's not the Naruto that we need. He's the Gaara Naruto that exists in the Sand Village, which isn't what the story's revolved around. So the show's just gonna jump towards beats of what Gaara is, and then more or less throw him out because they don't really need him. So unfortunately, that Naruto gets assassinated. Rock Lee's a Naruto. He's discriminated against and called a failure because he can't do basic shit that everybody else can do, but he has perseverance and taijutsu skills that he's honed himself. He wasn't even good at taijutsu when he started. He had to get trained those. So a nobody basically became a somebody through sheer attrition and force. But the show isn't called Rock Lee, it's called Naruto, so he has to get assassinated. Neji is the one person that opposes Naruto's beliefs and states that everybody's destined to be a thing, which is a very good philosophy considering that Neji technically was right the whole damn time, but the show has to get rid of him because if he's right too long, then he can rub his nose in it or some shit, I don't know. So they gotta kill that one. Konohamaru's a Naruto, but again, the show's not called Naruto, so they gotta erase that Naruto and basically make him sort of what Iruka Sensei is instead of a Naruto. Then you got Iruka, which is a Naruto, but he's a Naruto that's a nobody. So the show's gotta like throw him off into the river, and Naruto already has a bunch of senseis that relate to him too, like Kakashi and Jiraiya and shit. So that Naruto has to basically be just some Jonin, I guess. I don't know. Just sort of there. You can see the pattern though, is that in shonen, when a character is doing things that more or less get reused, but they're not the spotlight anymore because they need to sell the current toy or trading card or whatever, that character has to be thrown out because, you know, there's a better version of that character that exists. And that character is $19.99 at your local Walmart. What do you do about that? How do you cope with that? For us, it means a lot. Because there's some people that relate to a certain character more than another. They have a connection with that character. Something that the author themselves probably just didn't have. And everybody has preferences. There's a difference between wanting a shoe because it's blue or wanting a shoe because it's red. Everybody has a preference. But when the original maker of the shoe doesn't really care about blue and only made it because they needed to sell more shoes, then there's obviously going to be a bias. There's obviously going to be concern when a character like, say, Tien Shinhan was known to be an assassin that was really strong and trained in the art of Crane, who knows millions of techniques and can do all this crazy shit. But unfortunately, his hair can't turn gold, and he isn't part of a race that gets stronger and stronger dramatically without much training. So instead, he has to, like, throw him out because we already have a character who is fighting Goku at the World Tournament that hates Goku. And that's called Piccolo. But unfortunately, we don't need a Piccolo anymore because we have another character that does the whole I don't like Goku thing. And that's Vegeta. Most of Goku's friends are people that didn't like Goku because Goku toppled them at one point. And they're all straight-faced and they're all serious, and that's what makes them appealing. But unfortunately, Toriyama clicked the copy-paste button on all of them. So, sadly, we've got bald-headed Vegeta, we've got green Vegeta, and then we've got Vegeta. Well, all those characters have to be pushed to the side. But unfortunately, Vegeta's the most popular Vegeta, so they couldn't make any more Vegetas. Because Dragon Ball at this point took a huge break, and Vegeta is still marketable. So it's like, crap, if we can't make any more Vegetas, what do we do with this Vegeta? Well, we make this Vegeta have a conclusion to his character, twice, actually. But we couldn't really do anything with that, so we gotta make money. And since we gotta make money, we gotta make this Vegeta less Vegeta than he was before. Because if we make him any more Vegeta than he used to be, or make him as Vegeta as he was, that would be character regression. Or at least that's what the fans think. But we can't make him progress either, because then he would be better than our Goku. And no, we can't have a Vegeta better than our Goku. Hell no. Screw that. So we gotta just make copies of Vegeta that are Vegeta. But they're defective because they're a copy of a copy, right? They tried to make Vegetas with Hit and Granola. No wonder that they failed. I like how GT Super and, well, GT handled Vegeta, particularly at the Tournament of Power. Now, we already talked about how Super botched Vegeta. But Konohamaru, don't even talk about him. That boy is ass in Boruto manga. He's been taking L after L. I mean, that's kind of what the point is, Zachary. That's why I said Konohamaru's a Naruto. But we can't have him be better than the Naruto that already exists. The show's called Naruto. And again, when you say character assassination, you're more or less going to see it in shonen. And you're thinking, why in shonen? Why specifically shonen has the most character assassination? Well, shonen usually has this thing called, what we already talked about, marketing. And because of marketing, the shows have to continue way past their dates. They have to continue way past their time. Characters need to exist longer to sell more toys, but characters can't go through any layer of depth. Ash Ketchum is an unfortunate character that was trapped between a marketing sandwich. Pokemon was never intended to be this deep anime that was going through the intrinsic values of a boy and his Pokemon journeying through an entire region. Pokemon was meant to sell toys, was meant to sell video games. Ash is a product of all of that. And as the series continued, they didn't want to let Ash go, but they also wanted to keep making money. So they had to keep Ash going forever. So to the very beginning and in the very end, Ash was about making money. It's probably why from OG all the way up to, say, Diamond and Pearl, that's the only time you really felt like Ash was still deeply rooted in Ash as a character. Ash Ketchum was still rooted in the levels and layers that he was in OG, with his character slowly diluting toward by the time we get to Diamond and Pearl, where he still carried the same level of competence as a Pokemon trainer, and that competence grew, but it was very clear the way he handled situations was different. The Ash Ketchum that would take on conflict head on and literally fight things with or without his Pokemon began to be more child and family friendly. To the point where in Best Wishes, they had to completely reset him. Or to the very least, they had to make him a character that was a bit more fresh friendly to a new audience. By the time XY comes around, he's competent, but for a completely different reason. I love XY, but I know that Ash is competent only because of a knee-jerk reaction to Best Wishes Ash. That Ash was pretty much what happens when you take Ashes from OG, Johto, Hoenn, Diamond and Pearl, and then put them all together and then double down on them, make a new character, but stylize him as Ash Ketchum. He had to be competent. He had to be for the sake of backlash, for the sake of progression. But unfortunately, Sun and Moon was on its way, and Pokemon didn't learn its lesson yet on how to just make another character, and they had to make money, so Ash was forced to continue onward, and thus we needed a tangible reason for him to continue. He had to lose the Kalos League so that they can dangle the first prize trophy above our heads when he was in Sun and Moon. That way you have a reason to watch Sun and Moon. Because I guarantee you, no matter how many ways you want to flip it, if Ash had won the Kalos League successfully, became the champion, I don't think there's a lot of people that would have watched Sun and Moon. Yeah, because Ash Ketchum is a childhood face that everybody knows. Sun and Moon would have had an audience. Most definitely. Nobody's denying that. But Sun and Moon's, notoriety as a series would not have had any life support and would have aged like milk if Ash had won the Kalos League before even entering Alola. If Ash had won the Kalos League, people mentally would have ended Pokemon at X and Y. But because he went in second place, that first place jingling keys can still exist in another series. It gives you a reason to stick around. Even though they didn't really bring up the Pokemon League until much, much later in the series, the Pokemon League was finally brought up, and I guarantee you, viewership of Sun and Moon shot up once the Alola League started. It was all people that actually started to think about. People started watching Pokemon around the Sun and Moon, especially during the League, because they needed that sweet, sweet Ash victory. And then in Journeys, it was laid low again until they raised the stakes by having a world tournament that had very false expectations behind it. And at that point, Ash was in a point of no return. He had to keep winning. There were no more lessons for him. He couldn't revert back. He couldn't grow. And at the same time, he wasn't allowed to regress either. He was trapped between a marketing sandwich that forced him in order to get better, whether the show felt like he deserved it or not. And Pokemon, I hate to say it, was full of writers that realistically didn't want Ash to be this OP trainer. They wanted him to be a kid because they needed Ash to be relatable and marketable to kids. And the only way to realistically do that is to have him be a kid. And being a kid isn't necessarily a bad thing. Kids in shonen anime are shown several times to do a lot of fun stuff. But unfortunately, this was a series that had Ash for well over almost 30 years. So we had to do it. They had to make Ash act a certain way, but progress another way, because Pokemon was being pushed to its limits. That marketing sandwich that I talked about, earlier when I said, yeah, I had the sound effect and everything. It forced Ash to be a lot more than what he needed to be, while at the same time regressing him into something that we know realistically he wouldn't be if we watched it 30 years ago. But this is an anime that sells video games and toys, and I guarantee you the writers weren't expecting people to be watching Ash Ketchum for 30 years. Nobody really thought that, because the writers weren't even thinking that. Each writer, when they revolved around, probably had the task of writing Ash based on the very little that they knew of Ash at the time. And these aren't people that are making vlogs about Ash. These aren't people that are going on YouTube and making videos, about Ash Ketchum and his adventures. These aren't people that are writing research reports on Ash. These aren't people going on Twitter and posting that they're a part of a group of other people that are on a Discord server that talk about Ash Ketchum and his Pokemon and all his friends and their adventures. These are people who have a job. They have a job to do this thing and then pass it on to the next person whose job it is to do this thing. Remember that telephone game that I mentioned earlier in the discussion? That's pretty much this, but on a business scale. What do you do when the business, the corporation, the conglomerate that you have has played a game of telephone with a character, passed it along to several different people over a span of 30 years? Well, it's very obvious what you get. You get a character that's gone through multiple personality changes. Maybe kept the bullet points of being hungry or being headstrong, the things that make the template or outline of a Pokemon trainer like Ash Ketchum. But unfortunately, you lose the depth. It would be like if I told you all right now to draw a circle. Everybody knows what a circle is. But say I had a baby, and that baby grew up and became, that baby wound up being like a 3-year-old who doesn't know what shapes are yet. Baby's a toddler. And I just gave a baby a pencil, put a piece of paper in front of the baby and said, "Hi, baby," who can weirdly understand what I'm saying, "draw a circle." Well, a baby doesn't know what the hell a circle is. And a baby's only going off of what I told the baby a circle is that it's round. But a baby doesn't know what round is either. Do you guarantee that circle is going to look the same way as when I drew it? The person who knows and has innate knowledge of what a circle is. I can draw the circle on a paper, and then the baby, or the toddler, I guess, will draw the circle, and you hold it up, and you go, "Hey, wait a second. The shapes are there. The lining is there, I guess, but this isn't exactly a circle." I'm not sure what this is, actually. I mean, the pencil lines are there, so that's good. But it's not a circle. That's pretty much what happens to Ash Ketchum. Ash Ketchum is the circle, right? Ash Ketchum, over the years, has been a circle that's been told to be drawn multiple different times by toddlers that don't know what the fuck a circle is, or at least have vague knowledge of what a circle is. And that's not to insult the writers. They're just doing their job. They're not obligated to be the best at what they do. They're obligated to write. And this was a weekly series, too. That's one of the reasons why I said in Shonen this happens a lot. Back then in Shonen wasn't seasonal. Shonen was week by week. It had to go all forward and forward and forward and make several different episodes, and even episodes that weren't in the original source material because they had to make filler in order to fill the gaps between manga chapters being written. But they had to keep the character active. But whenever we engage with something in that anime, when you flip on the TV and that you see the Japanese opening that you don't know what the English words are, shut up, you don't. And you see that, it's almost like you're opening the door to their world. You ever see like in Wreck-It Ralph where all the video game characters live their own little lives, but when it's time to start playing the video game, they all do their like respective video game roles? It's kind of like that. Or like how they make the joke about how Goku and the others, when they're done with an episode of Dragon Ball Z, they say and cut, and all the characters are like acting like buddies, even Goku and Frieza and stuff, because they're just actors, but when it's time to actually start, they're performing. It's a fun little comic book joke, but the idea here is that the characters in and of themselves are pretty much active lists until it's time to get them into action. When you're reading the manga, it's almost like you're reading their script. That's what they're supposed to do. When you're watching in an anime, that's them performing everything that they did, only this time instead of the bullet points, you're getting the flow between all of it, right? But when you watch an anime, whether it be a filler episode or a canon episode or even a movie that's non-canon, you're seeing that character in a different light every time. It's one of the reasons why, like, a character may act weirdly aggressive in a filler saga, but they're weirdly passive in, like, the main material. It's like when Gohan says he doesn't like fighting against Cell, but you realize in the Garlic Jr. saga he was kicking ass and basically committed murder multiple times against multiple different henchmen during the Garlic Jr. saga. And you hop back to the Cell saga and goes, well, he doesn't like fighting. That's kind of weird. He's been in tons of battles. It's when you go into, say, Ash saying that he's never seen a legendary Pokemon before in one of the episodes of Pokemon, and then you look back at the movies and go, well, what the hell? Yes, he has. He's seen tons of legendary Pokemon. What the hell is he talking about? It's because whenever you watch that character, or at least when the audience sees that character, they're not really viewing the pencil, the paper, the work, the company, the business behind it all. They're opening the door to that universe, that reality. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. As kids, when you turned on Toonami and you watched your episode of Sailor Moon or Pokemon or Dragon Ball or Card Captors or whatever the hell you were watching, Yu-Gi-Oh, you weren't really thinking about what the person was drawing and then putting on like an animation time board. You weren't thinking about like the animators. You weren't thinking about the corporate struggles that they probably had to go through, or the dubbing things that they had to do, or the translations between Japanese katakana and kanji is translated to English. You weren't thinking about all of that. You were just in the world. You were almost like a character that was in that anime with them, who can only see them though, but not interact with the characters in and of themselves. You were with them. You were on a journey with Ash and his Pokemon journey with him. But he just couldn't see you or recognize you unless they made a fourth wall joke. You weren't actively fighting the pirates on One Piece along with Luffy and the others, but you did see the adventure. You're an eyewitness to what's going on. Because as a kid, and even growing up as an adult, when fiction ensnares you enough, you don't care about what's going on. Ironically enough, we're even having this discussion now because of the knowledge as growing up, what we know about the character behind closed doors is that this character isn't real. It's a person or multiple people, writing and drawing and coloring these people in, and then making their mouths move up and down while being dubbed by people in order to bring it to life. And every episode that you watch is a moment in time that you are in their universe. Good fiction, or even good acting, good performance, is when you're able to imagine that you're in the seat of what everybody else is doing and you're able to witness it. But what does that have to do with character assassination, you may ask? Character assassination is unfortunately due to character time. And in shonen, there's a lot of time. There's filler episodes. And even when there's not filler episodes, shonen episodes or shonen series are never within the 20s, the 24s, the 12s. They're always in like the hundreds, the thousands. So that's a longer world. That's more for the character to do. Whether you want to make this argument about them being canon or non-canon or whatever, every action you see that character do has become a part of your experience of that character. It doesn't matter if it's canon or not. It just matters that you've seen it, whether it's in character or not. You've lived that, or to the very least, it's an experience that happened in your life. You've seen Naruto do 100 missions with a bunch of side characters before he actually went to go train with Jiraiya for the time skip for Naruto Shippuden. Why? Well, if you watch the filler episodes of Naruto before that, then those adventures are still in your brain. Whether you want to decline them or not because they're canon or whatever, there's still moments. You still got to see Naruto say and do situations that you never thought he would say or do. You still got to see this character being used in a way you didn't think was possible. Every filler episode you see of an anime may not be exactly canon, but it does put a character in a situation that you never thought they would be in until you imagined it. Several times, we as kids try to imagine what a character would do if they were in the real world. What would this character do if they were at McDonald's? It's one of the reasons why the filler episode of Goku and Piccolo learning how to drive is so well received. Why? Because nobody in their right minds would even stop to think about what would happen if Goku and Piccolo learned how to drive. It's such an out-of-world thing for us to think about based on what the characters have been doing. If you read the manga and only the manga, or watch Dragon Ball Kai, I guess, then you would never even put in your brain Goku and Piccolo driving a car. Yeah, there's little fun little art covers of Goku being in a car driving it, but your brain doesn't know the ins and outs of Goku driving a car until that episode happened. Or to the very least, you may have imagined it, but the episode gave you the tangible viewership to see what that imagination looks like. Piccolo struggling to put on a seatbelt. Goku driving and racing against Piccolo, but wind up getting into a wreck. Piccolo accidentally Piccolo driving well while Goku's driving like a clown and ripping the steering wheel off, and an old man is freaking out because the car is about to careen into the road. These are things that are comedic and are placed in your brain, and now it's something that you can carry with you. Character assassination comes into the idea of what happens when we fill too many spots with these, and they start going against our mindset of what the character is, the progression that character goes through. But sadly, character assassination can also be used on the fact that when a series goes on long enough, that character has to be faced with certain situations, and rather than do it the way they would normally do it, they do it in a completely out of character way with no justifications as to why they would do it. Why would Usopp not directly fight an enemy like he's been doing pre-time skip, instead of cowardly running into a gag that makes him more or less weaker than he was before, and the whole world instead has to run with his lie and his joke, where the whole concept of Usopp was that he was a liar at first and was slowly becoming more towards his truths by fighting. The character that was forcing himself to be brave pre-time skip now has no choice but to revert back to this coward that can barely handle being in fights anymore, because the show has gone through not using him And because they haven't used them in so long efficiently in a battle, the series has decided this is what his character is. And it's never going to go back on what used to be, because then that would be regression. But it comes at the detriment of what he is as a character. Character assassination, for all intents and purposes, is trying to maintain what that character is on its base level while still trying to keep it going. I always view when a character exists as a lifespan. And the longer an anime gets, the more their lifespan is going to decrease, much like we all in real life. But character assassination needs to happen because, unlike real people, characters are bounded beyond something that makes money. These characters' appearances, these characters' debuts, these characters' actions are revolved around how well they do when it comes to marketing. And because of that, if that character is no longer useful in the level of marketing, or that character is replaced by somebody who can do their job better, then they'll get thrown out. Pokemon has tons of forgettable characters, sadly enough, because it was a new adventure every day. But it's also because of Pokemon that when a character exists, remember when I said that whole thing about when a writer or somebody creates an art and makes multiple different personalities from multiple different people? Well, while that person who made the art may not relate to it, the people that are around may relate to it in different ways. Take an artist, for example, like a painting artist. And he painted, I don't know, some abstract art. And let's say it's in like that Andy Warhol situation where he's like splattering the paint like on the thing, right? And maybe your favorite color is blue. Well, this painting has blue speckles on it, but the whole canvas itself isn't blue. Like the main color on this canvas is red. Blue is just the speckles on it. And then you get white speckles and yellow speckles and green speckles. And like, boom, there's your artwork. The background is red because red was the color used for the canvas. But everything else is speckles. Well, for your blue lovers, the people who like blue are only getting tiny speckles. While the people who like red are getting like the whole damn canvas. The people who like white are getting like these drizzles, and the people who like yellow are getting like these like large speckles. So essentially the person who's getting the blue is getting the short end of the stick. Like in My Hero Academia. There's tons of characters that get character assassination because My Hero Academia does the exact same thing that Naruto, Bleach, and all of its predecessor shonens do. Where around the second, maybe third saga of that show, they introduce a lot of characters, a crap ton of characters, all at once. All of them, bunches of them. Well over like 20 characters are all introduced to be a part of the cast at once. You got your characters from class 1A, then you got your characters from class 1B, then you got your characters that are teachers, then you got your characters that are like part of UA, but not really part of UA. Then you got your alumni characters. You got all these, right? Well, like Naruto did the Chunin exams. And we knew there were other characters in the background of Naruto, but they were mostly viewed as classmates at first. And then as we moved on, they were called the Rookie Nine. And then we got Neji and Tenten and Rock Lee. You add all of them. Then you got some Sand Ninjas, Gaara, Kankuro, and Tamari. And you add all of them in to the second arc, the Chunin exams, right? They're all in there at once. Well, now they're all a part of the cast. It went from a simple cast of Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, right? That was the original 4 that were in the Zabuza arc, and they were mostly the 4 that were doing everything. And then now you've combined that with 20 more characters, which is great because it gives the audience a bunch of different characters to choose from, to have preferences from. Variety's the spice of life. But what do you do just like in a buffet? I call this formula the buffet formula. Bleach did this too. Bleach's first arc was the Hollow arc, or I guess you could call it the Karakura Town arc, where Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, Uryu, and Rukia realistically were the only characters, with maybe Ichigo's like classmate friends occasionally being like the citizens that kind of give you a view of like what life is like as a normal average Joe. But during the second arc, we enter the Soul Society arc. Rukia gets kidnapped and Ichigo has to fight a bunch of different Soul Reapers that are very marketable. That's right. Keyword. Ikaku Madarame, Kenpachi Zaraki, Renji Abarai, Bakuya Kuchiki, Toshiro Hitsugaya, Momo, Izuru Kida, all of these characters are all very marketable. They can sell toys, they can be used in trading card games, they can be used in video games. They all are very usable, very, very distinct in their design, is what I want to say. But unfortunately, because all these characters were introduced at once, you have a character buffet. And why do I keep saying buffet? What does this have to do with food? I'm not hungry right now. At least I shouldn't be. It's like freaking, 9:46? It's too damn late for dinner. Or is it? Anyway, point is, I say a buffet because what do you do at a buffet? A buffet has lots of food. Tons of food. You got your chicken, your beef. Hell, some buffets have lobster. You got your crab legs. You got your pizza. And you're thinking in your brain, wow, this is a lot. Oh my God. I love everything here. The salad bar, the cheeses, the meats. Every group is here. I love it all. I want to eat it all. Well, do you actually eat it all? No. You grab a plate and you have your steak, maybe. You have your mixed vegetables. You have your fruits in a cup. You have your drink. And then maybe some pasta if you're feeling daring. And you put all that in a plate, and then maybe you'll go for seconds, but that's about it. You typically get one, maybe two plates, and you're done. That's it. And maybe some dessert if you're feeling a little feisty. What does this have to do with anime? What does this have to do with character assassination? That character buffet that I just explained? Look at all the characters. You got your character that's a tsundere. You got your character that's cutesy. You got your multiple characters with big boobs. You got your lesbian character. You got your very flamboyant male character. You've got your hard, edgy character. You've got your character that is comic relief. You got all these characters. Oh, I love all of them. I'm going to invest in every last one. I'm going to go to the backstory of all of them. I'm going to research all of them. I want them used in every last arc. No. The show chooses which characters are the most relevant out of all of these and uses those. And some shows can do this correctly. Some shows will divvy out which characters are used in which arcs based on the relevancy. My Hero Academia did a really good job of this at the very beginning. They would use like Deku, Todoroki, and Ida for one arc to fight like one guy, and then they would have like Deku and Orihime and somebody else fight this character. They would have these characters be used in this, and they would have some characters be used specifically for this arc because it wasn't time for that character to be used. Great. But the problem was that certain characters started being sat in the background for too damn long. And when a character's in the background for too damn long, it's just like that stuff that I said at the buffet. You love going to the buffet. You love all this food. But eventually, even if you go to that buffet multiple times, you're going to realize that there's foods that you just don't grab at the buffet anymore. I don't grab this anymore. Either I got spoiled and don't like it anymore, or B, I just found something that tastes better. Preference. And that's pretty much the same, not just with the audience, but the writers themselves. The writers themselves know that they can use a character like this more often than they can use a character like that. So they begin writing that character less and less and less and less. Why use this character when we already have a character that can do this? And when the anime is feeling particularly feisty, they'll bring in a new character that does the job that an older character realistically supposed to do. Sai is supposed to be the replacement for Sasuke, but Sasuke is way more popular than Sai. But we already have a bunch of background characters, and rather than add them to Team 7, we're just gonna make Sai a part of Team 7. So that unfortunately means that any character that could have had more screen time doesn't have screen time. Kiba could have been added to Team 7. Done it. All it would have taken was, you're doing a transfer. Hinata could have been added to Team 7. Hell, they don't even need to make a Team 7. They could make Naruto a part of a different team. Which they kind of did in the filler arcs of Naruto. That's kind of why I like the filler arcs of Naruto. But that's what unfortunately happens. And the reason character assassination exists is because the show has a buffet of characters that they can use, but the show's not going to use every character. Like in Hitman Reborn, sometimes villain characters turn into a bunch of hero characters in an instant. It's a formula where like the villains that we fought in the last arc became the heroes of this arc. Naruto did that with the Sand Ninjas. The Sand Ninjas were bad guys, then they became good guys literally after the arc. But unfortunately, those characters are only used when they need to be called. The Sand Village and the Leaf Village aren't as one, so the Sand Village ninjas can only be used when the show feels, okay, it's time to use them. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people praise movies, no matter if they're canon or not, or even bring them up, because movies give for a character a chance to shine in ways that the anime or the source material just didn't give them a chance for. One Piece has neglected most of the Straw Hats. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Robin get the bulk of the attention. I want more Frankie, Nami, and Jinbei. And that's another thing. One Piece. One Piece is an anime that's gone through a lot. And I think the main reason why One Piece is an anime that ends up ultimately having characters that are pushed back isn't even because Luffy's gaining more crew members. The show carefully makes sure that each crew member is gained in a pacing way. There isn't a saga where Luffy gets 5 crewmates in one saga all at once, and we have to get used to all those characters around the same time. No, One Piece does this thing where like each character gets their own saga that essentially recruits them. Kind of like how JRPGs do it, where in a JRPG, the JRPG centers itself around a specific character in that chapter, and then that character decides to join the party at the end of the chapter because they have a common foe that the main characters have. One Piece moves in that same direction. The problem with One Piece, though, is that One Piece messed up because its expectations needed to meet up to what shonen anime standards are. And shonen anime has grown a lot over time, and one of the things that's most treasured about shonen anime is the fights, the battles, the overcoming of something that's bigger than what the character is. Well, unfortunately, this means the job of the lesser characters like the shipwright, the marksman, the navigator, the doctor, these characters don't get the chance to do what they need to do because those things aren't fights. Nowadays, One Piece, once they get to the island, the need to use the ship, the need to be a marksman, the need for a character to rather do their side job is pushed away in favor of the character being a fightable character. The need for a character to have that special move that's going to be used in a video game. The character to have that power-up transformation that people can draw on Twitter. For that character to reach some new transformation that's going to debate on Twitter for a year and a half if it's better than Super Saiyan. Fucking One Piece fans, why? That is pretty much, sadly, what it's come down to. The evolution of shonen has caused a lot of character assassinations because the character needs to immediately do something right then and there, or they're more or less fodder. It's one of the reasons I don't like the fact that people state that if a character isn't actively fighting in Dragon Ball Z, then they're useless. So like Bulma, for example, is an inventor, but she's not a fighter, so who cares? Yamcha helping Goku cure his heart virus by transporting him from place to place and helping him get the medicine. And the Cell Saga doesn't count because it wasn't a fight. Them getting together, characters getting together and thinking of ideas to like get around an obstacle doesn't count as fighting. So as far as Shonen's concerned, or as far as the fans are concerned, it didn't happen. And that is a big dagger in the hearts of a lot of characters that cause character assassination. Because if the fans aren't receiving these moments well, then the character isn't well received, and thus the character can easily get thrown out and nobody will care. Characters like Gohan get assassinated, and I made this joke earlier that he gets assassinated every other arc because Gohan isn't allowed to progress in either direction. If he's allowed to rest, peace, and actually achieve his goal of being a scholar, then he's assassinated because he's not punching things really, really hard. But if he's punching things really, really hard, then he's stagnant and only becomes basically a copy of what Goku is, but on a lesser scale. So either way, he gets a character assassination. He's got to be strong, but he can't be stronger than Goku. Not anymore, because the show isn't the show isn't killing Goku off anymore. The show's not going to get rid of Goku in favor of Gohan. So there's no realistic way for Gohan to be stronger than the main character, because a character being stronger than the main character, unless that character is a child, doesn't make any damn sense. Shonen did this a lot, where like Jujutsu Kaisen, Naruto, and the others will make the young characters weaker than the adult characters, but that's only because the adult characters are supposed to be a stepping stone for what the children characters are supposed to grow into. As the time skip that inevitably is supposed to happen goes, that character is supposed to surpass the character that previously existed. But Dragon Ball, as well as several other shonens, are shows that don't necessarily have this generational now it's your turn mindset. So characters have no choice but to either be relevant right now or be thrown out at that moment. So these characters that can't throw giant balls of ki, make their power levels in the cojillions, or use haki, more than half of Luffy's crew, can't be relevant, because if you put them in a fight, you would have to make the enemies that they're fighting extremely weak, or you would have to give the characters this boost of strength. But then you run into a whole nother problem where now that these characters are strong, they're starting to lose what makes those characters unique. The reason I liked Usopp, pre-time skip at least, was because Usopp was a character that was just a regular guy. You got Luffy eating a devil fruit, you got Zoro being a samurai with these cool little sword moves, and you got like Sanji, who learned a specific style of martial arts but can still cook. And then you got Usopp, who's a marksman, yes, but he was also just a regular dude. Everything he was fighting, and the tools he used to fight him, were more or less just items that you or I could make. And that's what I loved about it. Because One Piece had its weird level of understanding where, yes, there were characters that can do special stuff, but under the right conditions, anything can happen. Usopp's useless in a fight against somebody who's stronger than him. But what if Usopp had a ball of like ammo that can crack open and make oil? And it cracks over the opponent and the oil splatters over them, and it doesn't mean anything, and the opponent laughs and is like, ha ha ha, all you could do is make me a little messy with oil? Is that all you got? I can break freaking buildings with my fist. You're gonna die. And then Usopp's next shot is like this gunpowder, but the gunpowder reacts to the oil and bursts the enemy into flames. That's not a hard weapon to make. That's crap you can find on the ground. But it was a fun level of like, okay, these are simple things that will eventually turn into a problem if left unchecked. So now this opponent is bursted into flames because Usopp was cleverly able to get two conditions just right to cause him to be stronger. It was never about strength. It was never about being the top. It was about using your knowledge of what you got in combination with your resources. But unfortunately, One Piece isn't about that anymore. Post time skip, if you can't use hockey, you realistically don't even need to be here. And if you can't use hockey or devil fruit or fishman's karate, then you're not really putting up a fight. Not really. You may be in a situation where funny things may happen in your favor, but you're not in a fight. And One Piece has centered itself and tunnel visioned itself to be about fights. When they get to an island now, it's when does the fight start? Characters that aren't being used are just more or less background, exposition characters, or in Usopp's case, an expression character. Someone used so that their eyes can pop out when the opponent does something scary, and they go, "Eee!" And they have to measure up the situation of how big something is. A character is about to hurt Luffy in a crazy way, and they got this giant ball that Luffy has to fight. Well, have your background characters go, Nani! That needs to happen now. Dragon Ball Z has this too, don't worry. It's where Goku fights an enemy and Yamcha, Tien, Krillin, and the others stare and go, Goku's gotta get out of this one. Come on, guys. You can do it, Goku. It has to be. Otherwise, it would just be Goku versus somebody in empty playing field, which it normally is, sadly, and in modern Dragon Ball at least. There's no characters that can utilize their other skills in order to make an alternative action. There's no characters that can use their other skills in order to cause something to happen. As much as I say that the Majin Buu saga is my least favorite, I still like it, and the ending is actually pretty cool when you consider that, yes, Goku and the others could have fused and just won the damn fight instantly, but Mr. Satan is a character that isn't particularly strong, but he does wind up using his suave and charisma skills in order to get everybody to raise their hands so Goku can use the Spirit Bomb. Majin Buu and Vegeta are the ones that are buying time for the Spirit Bomb. Everybody has a role here. Everybody's doing something to their ability. And that's why it works. Vegeta's the one that made the plan in the first place. So he's the one that made the plan. The other characters are executing it. It's a great way to use strategy. And it's a great way to have the characters all be useful in their own ways and work together. It's one of the reasons why character assassination doesn't have to happen if the show would just shorten its cast and utilize each character effectively. Slice of life animes don't have character assassination, or have very little of it. The reason being is because usually slice of life animes don't have a lot of characters in them. They have central characters, and then there's maybe some background characters that help breathe some life into it. But more or less slice of life characters find a way to make everything relevant. Everybody has their own moment. There's a main character and a secondary main character, yes. Or even a main character and then the rest are side characters. But every character more or less is used in a way that's efficient enough for you to fully believe that that character belongs in the universe that was created. Characters that are beloved by some are obviously going to get more love than others. And that goes with any level of fiction, not just shonen. Anytime you watch like a show, a sitcom, an anime, a cartoon, whatever have you, there's always going to be some characters that you see that you wish could be bigger than what they are. And sometimes people can falsely accuse a character of character assassination, when unfortunately, it's not even character assassination. It's just you've hyped up the character to be more than what they are. But what do you do when a character is used in a way that you like specifically, but sadly, the investment into making that character isn't invested into the character that you like? And it's hard to do because the person that's making something, the writer, the author, the whatever, they're never going to put in as much work on every character as you want them to put. Characters will have moments of spotlight, yes, And there's even situations where a character is clearly meant to be a background character, a side character, but the artist or author fell in love with that character and they wound up gaining more development than they realistically should. But on the overarching scale of things, every character has its fans and its haters. So there's always going to be a moment in which, even when I view right now, talking about this, where I say a character is being assassinated, somebody else could be saying that that character has progressed. Or to the very least, that character needed to not exist anymore because I didn't like that character anyway, and I wasn't invested enough to care whether or not they were assassinated or not. An assassination, for me, in my mindset, could be a development for somebody else. But even talking in a non-biased sense, you still can't deny that a character's relevancy within the universe that they're in is solely dependent on what the author wants for that character. But that goes into a more psychological thing. We don't know what's in store for a character when it comes to a writer's mind. There's no way for us to hop into somebody's brain and go, this is what this person's thinking about. This is how this person decides to write this character. Opinions about a character can change overall through media, whether it be by the author and the writers or the fans in the community. And we've even established this earlier in the conversation that people's views on a character can weirdly have an effect on the character itself. And that's only because if the author or the writer has been suggested or told by editors or given some incentive to do so, they'll make that character be written in a way that more or less shows that that character has made a change, but not within universe. Clearly an out of universe change that definitely makes things go awry. I want to roll back to RWBY for a second because in RWBY, there's a character named Blake, and she ends up in a relationship with Yang later in the series. What does that have to do with character assassination? It doesn't with them two. It does, however, with Sun. Sun is a character that was introduced in RWBY around season 2 that had a budding relationship with Blake. It's very clear that him and Blake started off being developed as a fauna couple. They're both faunas, but one of the faunas was discriminated against while the other one wasn't. Sun had a very positive mindset about being a fauna, where Blake knows the dark and edgy sides of being a fauna. The two were like night and day. It's even in the damn course of their name. Blake Belladonna, black is the night, sun is the day. They even share a song together. So it's very clear the show was aiming towards them being in a canonical relationship. But as RWBY progressed, a lot of people wound up shipping Yang and Blake together instead. And sadly, while it is more progressive for a lesbian couple to exist in a show to show that the show's inclusive, it came at the sacrifice of Sun. This poor character now is not even in the series. And when he is in the series, he's very briefly shown and is completely irrelevant, and Blake never refers to him. Blake never talks about him. Blake never cares about him. Blake never mentions him. Blake never has any flashbacks of him. Blake doesn't even say his name because his character has been assassinated. But it's so obvious his character was assassinated because the tone and shifting of the series has changed in order to fit a completely new agenda. I don't have anything against same-sex characters having a relationship. I don't even have anything against different gendered characters having a relationship. What I do have something against is a character being sacrificed and their growing development for the sake of something that the fans bring into view. That's where the problem is. If the show had started off with Blake and Yang starting a relationship, and then Sun came out of nowhere and wound up in a relationship with Blake, you know, the reverse, I would still be upset because it's very clear that something's being taken down. A certain aspect about that character is being assassinated for the sake of moving forward. And while Sun isn't a part of Team RWBY, he is a part of Blake's life, a very pivotal part of Blake's life. So to see his character be thrown away so easily makes it very, extremely clear that he is a victim of character assassination. Whether you like Sun or not, whether Sun's one of your favorite characters or not, you can't deny that. Anybody with eyes can see that that's blatant character assassination. But why is this? Again, a lot of things can affect a character's assassination. How fans view them, how people view them, how the show's making money, if the show isn't making money, what the show can potentially do with the money that it already has, losing its author, the original creator dying, or the original creator still being alive but not having the same emotional attachment to something that the fans do. All of these things play a huge factor into a character dramatically changing. And these characters obviously aren't real, we know that. But these characters carry on a level of spirituality, of a level of emotion, a level of depth, a level of love to them that the fans and the writers alike have all conglomerated towards to put together and come to a very important aspect of what that person is supposed to be. That when we see it changed, whether it be drastically, whether it be through a reboot, whether it be through various writing changes, whether it be through suggestions, all of these factors, it's something that we know that can happen at any point, at any time, and in any context. I guess what I'm trying to say here to wrap all this up is character assassination is something that we don't know whether it's good or bad in the grand scheme of things. And while we are aware that it exists, and we know that anime characters and fictional characters in general are going to go through it, even characters that exist within the realm of reality can go through these major changes, whether they be good or bad. We as people will know and be aware of what they are. And that will definitely change the perception of how we view not just the characters, but the community that these characters come from. The people that we associate these characters with. Character assassination goes a lot deeper than just, oh, Vegeta acted weird that one time in that one series or that one span of 100 episodes. Character assassination goes into the depths of a character, the psychology of a character. And moreover, it goes to the psychology of the mind of the people behind those characters. We as people want to know exactly why this happened, when in reality, there's no realistic way for us to even know why that happened. Because that would cause us to go and dig further more in depth into something that any writer could ever create. Because a writer or anybody who creates fiction, their only job realistically is to make a character. The amount of depth that they put into it is based off their passion and their passion alone. We are in their world. We are part of their universe that they've created. And everything that we create beyond or above that, any headcanons that we go upon, any situations that we put the characters in that they weren't realistically in or in ironically, are just things that expand upon our mindset and the universe that's in it. Whatever happens to that character is pretty much at the mercy of the context that happens. But as children, in our innocence, or as growing up as people, we're realistically not supposed to know all of it. Knowing these things is good, definitely good, but it's not the key premise of how we should view ourselves or view these characters on a constant basis. I love anime. I love comics. I love video games. I love all forms of entertainment. But when I see a character and I talk about these things and I rant about them or I go off on them or review them in any situation, I do have to glue myself into the reality that these aren't real people. They're not. And I am going to still talk about them. And I am going to be passionate about it. And for this whole thing, it doesn't mean don't lose your passion about them. But understand the meaning that we are growing up. We are engaging into things. And it's good to have a sense of realistic belief of what something should be and what it's portrayed as. It's fun to have these thoughts. It's fun to play in this world, in this universe, to engage and talk with people who also share the views about these things. But we also have to understand that we are in a rooted level of reality. So when a character does get assassinated or a character is treated a certain way, even understanding the context as to why or when they got assassinated or how they got assassinated, it's also good to know that while that is the case, you can still have your character or the character that you like the most be rooted in a belief that you like. I can talk all day about how I don't like how Vegeta's changed in Dragon Ball Super and even in Dragon Ball Daima. I can talk all day about how I liked him as a character in his introduction all the way up to the Cell Saga and say that that was peak Vegeta. And realistically, if I want, I can just watch those episodes of Dragon Ball Z and just shut the hell up and not move on. But seeing a character develop, seeing a character progress or regress is a part of the experience. So I'm definitely going to take those things into account when I look at the character and how they move. But these are things that realistically should just be discussed. They shouldn't be fought on Twitter. They shouldn't be death threats about how the character has gone in and changed a certain thing that you did or didn't like about them. It shouldn't be something that is taken personally. It shouldn't be something that you literally are crying about in your room alone. It shouldn't be something that you should do self-harm with because you can't cope with the level of what's happening to that person. Reality is a very, very important aspect in all of this. Because when you look at the perception of a character, when you look at the identity of a character, you got to understand that that character can only go as far as the imagination can take him. Whether it be in your own fanfic or whether it be in the talk of somebody else or some future work that finally decided to characterize this character correctly or in a way that you view it. The world is beautiful because it has so many mindsets, so many perceptions, so many ways of thinking, so much complex moral gray area that's not just staple. I think the reason that we really even have this discussion of character assassination in the first place is because we know that there's so many different paths and layers and approaches that a character, fictional, can go, whether you like them or hate them, and so many routes. And you want to be on that journey with them. But you also have to root yourself in the level of reality that whatever happens, it's just fiction. But I think that pretty much ends it for this discussion. Thank you all so much, Navy. Rescue Squad did come late, but I'm glad to see you anyway. Destar, Dante, had a couple of people, Zachary, Navy.
Not the Navy!
Kuro, really nice to have you all join the conversation. Spark Nation, Antrite, glad to see you all. Gold Miner, what's up? Glad to see you all were able to make it. So that pretty much ends it for this all. And the Discord server is still open and the comment section. So let me know your thoughts on what you thought about this discussion about character assassination. Because I feel we definitely got deeper into this discussion than I realistically thought I would go. We got a bit more psychological about it too, but I love it. And it was a good time. With that being said, I think it's time for us to go ahead and end this and move on.